Hello everyone. Welcome to today's seminar. My name is Xu Zhang. I'm Assistant Professor of Marketing at London Business School. It is a great pleasure for me to host today's webinar and to introduce our speaker, Professor Andrew Cheng. Professor Cheng is a full professor at Johns Hopkins University's Carey Business School with joint appointments in the Department of Economics and the Bloomberg School of Public Health. He is a co-founder and research director of the Digital Business Development Initiative. Professor Chen is highly respected in the academic community, and he serves on the editorial boards of several leading journals. His research focuses on understanding how consumers and businesses make decisions in complex real-world environments. He develops innovative models to capture strategic thinking, learning, and adaptation. His latest work explores how AI and machine learning are transforming the way we understand decision making in our rapidly changing world. We're very delighted to have Professor Ching with us today. So, Professor Ching, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for the very nice introduction. So today's the seminar that I want to present, the paper that I want to present is Are Exposure Bugs Worth It? As you can tell, we're going to be using data from Instagram. And by the way, if anyone have questions during my presentation, please feel free to just ask questions. I think unless there are way too many questions, otherwise I think there are a lot of people in the room. I'm not very good at keeping track of whether someone raised hands or not. So please, I think you can feel free to just unmute yourself and ask the question, and that just makes it more like a regular seminar. And by the way, Sue, I have it until 10 a.m. Am I right? 1 hour.
Yes, 1 hour. That's
Okay,
right.
good. Yeah, so it's not a long paper. It's not a complicated paper. So please do feel free to ask questions. Even there are a lot of questions at the beginning. I think that helps understanding the institutional background, and then so yes. Okay, let me go on and just first, what is exposure bugs, right? And just make sure we understand what we're talking about. If you search, you just put exposure bug in Google and search. This is one of the first links that pop up, and it will say something like this: Are you sacrificing time and money for exposure bugs? Okay, so what does it mean? Well, there are situations where creators sometimes provide content to a platform in a very general way. I'm talking about not just Instagram, but just in general. The creators are oftentimes willing to just provide free content. Could be to newspapers, could be doing a free performance at a show. And why do they do this for free? Well, they want, they may be kind of unknown, and some people even very well known, they do that. But what they want to get at is if they're working on a platform that has a lot of audiences, that may allow them to gain a lot of exposure. And later on, that might help them to gain reputation, and that allow them to be able to maybe, in the long run, allow them to actually land a paid gig and something like that. Okay, so that's kind of the idea. That's what we mean exposure bugs. The platform may not pay the content creator in terms of money, but by just having them in the newspaper, in the website, and in their account, and post those content, allow them to share those content with a lot more people that they couldn't do if they just do it on their own website or on their own account. And so that's the idea. So let me just give you some examples. Even well-known people, Prince, Katy Perry, a lot of other people, they perform in Super Bowl halftime show, right? And I don't know, if you realize that, these people, even though they're very well known, obviously, they do a concert, they will make millions of dollars. But for Super Bowl halftime show, they actually do it for free. They don't get paid by doing that. by making that performance, and it's a very, intense effort. And so why is that? And if you look at some anecdotal evidence, I'm not saying this is, these numbers come from some careful DID studies, but some, correlations evidence suggests that people like Shakira, she saw 230% increase in streams in her account. And Justin Timberlake, see music sales increased by 500%, and so on and so forth. And so these are some evidence that Super Bowl has so many people watching, and when someone perform a halftime show, even though they're well known, they can gain exposure, and that can lead to some, in this case, some immediate consequences. At least based on the correlations of the data. And now you may say, well, these may be special cases. These people are very well known. Is it really generally true that these kind of exposure bugs are so valuable? And so that's the kind of the question that we want to ask. We don't want to just look at these kind of superstars. In fact, we want to look at creators who are relatively unknown, and if they try to collaborate with a brand with a lot more audiences, and to what degree they could benefit from it. And so now there are two opposing views about this. A lot of people may think, oh, of course, if you're unknown, you should do it. And there are this view, right? That number one view, exposure is going to help you. But there are also a lot of people, if you just browse online, just go through those blogs, there are people who ask and they wonder, some creators, they said they get contacted by their brand, they get contacted by, some concert and ask them to perform for free, or contribute the content for free, should they do it, And there's some people who come in and say, well, exposure is something that you die from, not something you get paid with, right? This is sort of a very sarcastic way to basically says, don't do it. It's not worth it. So that's just kind of opposing views. And now it's not surprising to have these kind of opposing views because first, just one exposure may not really lead to a lot of measurable impact. You might need to have accumulated exposures, and second, there is actually not that easy to do a careful study to measure the value of exposure benefit. Okay, and so that's what we're trying to do in this paper. And also, why is it? Let me just, before I get to how we address those quantitative challenges, let me just say a few more words about why we think this is an important research question. And influencer marketing is getting really big these days. And how does the creators build up their number of followers, build up their own reputation, their own brand? That's something the literature is very interested in, and of course the creators are very interested in as well, right? Because they're managing their own brand. How can they actually build up their reputation quickly? And so knowing the value of exposure, it's going to help guide them their decisions on whether to provide content, and maybe under what kind of circumstances maybe it makes sense to do it. Under some sort of circumstances, maybe the exposure benefit is too low, you shouldn't do it. And that's one, and for the brands, that's also important, right? Because if you know the value of exposure, maybe the brand underused that tool to attract content contributors, right? And maybe they should use it more often, or maybe they use it too much, so they should supplement exposure bugs with some monetary payment. Now, fundamentally, this creative content by itself is a market, right? And if we don't know, to what degree the exposure bug is really, or exposure benefit is worth, it could very well be the case that the market is not operated efficiently. there may be too much content being provided for free, for example. People overdone it, or maybe too little. And so fundamentally, I think this answer to this question in the long run would allow us to shed light on these more fundamental economic questions. Is the creative content market efficient? Now, I'm not going to be able to actually answer this big question, but I wanted to set the stage, just motivate why we want to study this by laying out the last bullet points. And about the literature, as I said, there are a lot of people interested in these questions not about exposure bugs, but just about influential marketing, how people build up their brand, build up their follower base, and the earlier works, actually pretty recent works, some of them by my colleagues, Vanessa, my former colleague, Matt Mitchell, and they have this theory that when people, influencers, build the fan base, what they would do is they will harvest it. And when they will harvest it, it means that they take some sponsor post, right? And the problem is that those sponsor posts actually could hurt themselves. When you do a sponsor post, it's like you take advertising money, and your followers may not like the fact that you may no longer be genuine. You may be actually doing this post because you receive some money from Nike or something. So you talk something very positively about Nike products. And so when that happens, you could lose some followers, right? And so this is very interesting because it actually suggests that exposure benefit, if you collaborate with the brand, now this is different from taking money from the brand to create content. Oftentimes, when you collaborate with a brand, the content creators, especially those unknown ones, may just do it for free. However, the fact that you associated with the brand, people may still, regardless whether you get paid or not, may infer that your post is not necessarily genuine, and that could also lead to negative effect on you, right? So that's one thing, that that we will, whatever you're going to measure, is going to be the net effect, right? It could be some positive effect of exposure, but it could also be coupled with some negative effect that the fans, your followers may feel like, oh, you're no longer genuine, you're not doing something that, I see something very different style, and that might actually hurt you as well. So now the story that I was talking about in the management literature actually has been mentioned from time to time, not surprisingly, right? Because a lot of people sort of recognize that, and a lot of artists would do things for free in hope of getting more people see their performances, see their work. And the thing is, as I said, the empirical challenges makes it difficult for us to actually measure those effects. And so what are the challenges? Let's just make sure that we know what they are. Number one, of course, you have to observe a lot of data, right? So that means for any empirical works, you want to be able to measure the effect. In our case, we need to observe lots of brand creator collaborations. And the second challenge is that we need to be able to measure the benefit of exposure, right? We don't have some metrics to measure it, and that we have to be able to observe those metrics. And the third challenge is self-selections, right? Creators' contributions in terms of the content, that those content, when you collaborate with a brand, may be different from the regular content that you give. And it could be that the creator feel like, oh, now is my big chance of being exposed to a lot more people than I used to. So I work particularly hard. So that's one thing, that it may, it's not a regular post that you put out. And the timing may be non-random. In what sense? It could be that the brand, when they select a creator, right, when they reach out to the creator to get them contribute the content, they may actually feel like, oh, this creator is in an upward trend. Maybe this creator did something very, very good, and that lead to some viral trends in the number of followers. And so they want to benefit from the popularity of the creator. And so if we don't sort of control for this timing, or we don't try to, filter out this type of viral events, that might also lead to misleading inference. And now another thing is that brands sometimes may put constraints on the creator style, right? So that could also lead to selection problems. And so all this basically suggests that we need to be careful about the content. We need to be able to control for the content of those posts. Now, how do we address that? Right. So number one, the title of the paper already give it away. We're going to turn to Instagram for the first challenge. And what happened is in 2021, Instagram introduced features that allow brands to give credits to creators in a collaborator post. And so that allows to very easily to identify which post is collaborator post. So these are not sponsored posts. And because of that, we are able to, and the data in Instagram, we can just scroll from, and a lot of research companies actually sell the data as well. So we're able to collect a lot of collaborator posts there that allow us to get started. By the way, any questions? Did I hear questions?
Yes, yes. May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, sure, yes.
Is it possible that the influencer getting the payments from the brands outside of the platform? Is that something happening common?
We cannot rule this out, right? We cannot rule this out. And so just to be clear, there could be monetary payments behind it, but that's something we are not able to observe.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess it also doesn't challenge what you are trying to learn here, right? Whether they get paid or not, I mean, still we want to measure the value of the exposure box.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So it should not, yeah, because we're controlling for the content. And so yeah, I think we are inclined to just be with you on this, whether we are able to, whether there's money or not, is not, we don't think it matters much. But of course, if we're able to observe it, then we can control for it as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Sure. Yeah, sorry. Any other questions? Just want to make sure I'm not going too fast. Okay. About the second challenge then. How do we measure the benefit of exposure? Right now, in the influencer marketing or Instagram, one very obvious way that people pay attention to, the influencers pay attention to, is the number of followers that they have.
Hi, Professor. And
Yes.
I see the method you address challenge two, and it reminds me a paper published on MS. It says that if creator sponsor some brand, it will have a reputation burning effect.
That's right. Yeah.
It will decrease its followers.
Yes.
And uh, if his paper is right, is that your effect is underestimated?
Yeah, so very good. So that's what I was trying to say earlier. That's the earlier
Yeah,
work that I cited here. Some
yeah,
of this work, empirical works, that they found evidence that support the theory works, that theory works basically claim that this is going to happen. But it's good that we actually see some empirical evidence that supported by Chen and Zhang and Bharathi and Lambrot. And you're right. So that's why I kind of try to say, and I'm glad that you bring it up again, that the effect that we're going to measure will be the net effect. Okay. It will be the exposure effect subtract maybe any kind of repetition burning effect. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, yeah. So when we get to the result, especially the heterogeneous treatment effect, I may be able to say a few more words on that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
And yeah, good. Yeah. Any other questions?
So I have another question, if I
Yes.
may ask.
So yes.
So here, one, it is about the collaboration. Is it that the creator going to make a post about the brand, or is it the brand also going to make a post about the creator? Does it always happen, like the two posts from both sides?
So I'm going to say that a little bit more. So what happens is when this kind of collaborator post happens, is the same post, exactly the same post will appear in both the brand account and also the creator account at the same time.
I
Okay.
see. So
Yeah.
the creator account is being explicitly mentioned by the brand's post.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So the creator account will be easily identified from the brand account. And so people can be very easily be able to go and click the creator account when they see the post. If they like it, they can just click there and take them to the creator account.
Yeah.
And then if they like the creators, if they like the content they see about the creator, then they may decide to follow the creator.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? All right, so let me then get to the challenge 3. Actually, I think I already, yes, the challenge 3, how do we address it? We're going to control the content, right? So that very important things that I talk about, people may put in more effort, or the brand may put some constraints on the creator that lead to some, endogenous changes in the content. How do we sort of tease out that effect, the content effect alone, not the exposure effect? Well, we're gonna actually measure the content. And how do we measure the content? Oftentimes these are pictures, videos that people posted. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the ChatGPT, the latest versions, at least a few months ago, to interpret content. And ChatGPT is very good at, when you upload pictures, ask them to describe it. They can describe it in very details these days. And with the words, then we're going to just map it to a vector of basically mathematical vectors, high-dimensional vectors, to represent those contents. And then we do some dimension reductions, and then do some clustering, allow us to sort of manage those vectors in a more manageable way. And then we basically use those cluster characteristics to as a set of mathematical variables to help us to control the content. So that's what we do for the collaborative post. And then we're going to have a set of control groups, and we'll do the same thing in the control groups. And then we're going to try to find from a big potential control groups, and then use the content matching to help us narrow down to a set of control group that is much more, hopefully much more believable as a control group that we can then use and apply DID research design to shed some light on this research question. Now, to address non-random timing, what happens is we actually have high frequency data. Okay, so the way we're able to measure the changes in the number of followers, we basically have daily data. And so when you have such a high frequency data, that's a great way to sort of address the questions about this kind of endogenous timing, because the user in the endogenous timing is not a daily decisions. But we also try to do something to remove the data that or remove the creators that appears to have some viral trends. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more. So what would be the examples for this kind of collaborator post? This is one example. This is collaborated between Converse and this creator, Raft. So it's basically a picture, right? And it's posted, people can make comment on it. And now if you actually go to Raft account, this is what the Raft account looks like, right? That's what the Converse account by itself look like. And as I said, this post is going to be posted in both Raft account and Converse account. But Converse has a lot more followers, right? 10 million followers, as opposed to Raft only have 27,000 followers. And so you can imagine that when people see these posts in the Converse account, there is a very good chance that there are a lot more people, the 10 millions, probably most of them are not following Raft, and they may be the first time they see Raft, and they may just click Raft account and go there, and then check out her content. And if they like it, they may decide to follow her. Now, of course, there could also be the case that Raft followers also see the same post, and they may not like what they see, and they decide to drop out. That's also possible, right? So the effect, the changes of the number of followers that we measure, as I said earlier, as someone asked earlier, it's going to be the net effect. Okay, so how do we collect the data? We will start off by selecting top brands in beauty, clothing, and shoes from fashionu.com, united.com, and also startengage.com. We get 260 brands, and among them, we found 15,340 co-author posts and 4,320 co-authoring creators accounts. Now, we are only going to keep accounts with less than 200,000 followers, okay? And the motivation is we want to focus on the people who are relatively small. Okay? We don't want to look at some creators with millions of followers. We think they are just very different types. And what we're hoping to get at is that with accounts with smaller number of followers, then the exposure benefit will come out more in a more dominant way, right? If any. And so that's the motivations. So once we put these constraints on this selection criteria, that leaves us 692 treated creators. And so we complete the followership, we collect the complete followers histories for each of these treated creators. And now we also see some of them appears to go viral before they are being selected to create a collaborator post. And so for those cases, we remove them. And so that leaves us 648 treated creators. Okay, just to give you some idea about
May I ask some questions about the data?
yes.
Yeah, I can see the rationale why you focus on the accounts with less than 200,000 followers, because
Yeah.
very likely when they become big, then they are going to be paid rather than exposure bucks by real bucks. Why do you restrict to those people collaborated with the brand only once?
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I somehow skipped that. And that's because we just don't want to have we want to have a clean DID study.
Okay.
That's all. And I think we look at how likely someone actually get it twice.
Yes.
I forgot the number now, but I think it's actually relatively uncommon in our data set that we see somebody collaborated with a brand more than once in this kind of collaborations. There's
I see.
some, but but off the top of my head, I don't remember the percentage.
Okay, makes sense. And then the other question I have is about the viral growth.
Mm,
Because I think that's actually a very important incentive for some of the brands to work with like smaller accounts because there is a
yeah,
potential for them to go viral at certain points so that they
yes,
can leverage that viral growth.
it
Uh,
is. Yeah, yeah. But at the same time, if you include them, you will have to take into account whether the effect, is due to their viral growth, right? Because the viral growth, I mean, just happened.
yeah,
Um, uh, it's so-called viral growth, right?
I see.
So
So
it may
here,
just suddenly today, you become very popular uh, for the post that you posted, uh, and me as a brand, I noticed that, right? Then I approach you and I say, hey, why don't we do a collaborative post really quickly now because you are very popular, and but then the impact becomes kind of mingled together,
I see. Yeah,
right? It mingled with the viral trends with whatever post that we made. We don't know, maybe the collaborative post actually has no effect, but your
mhm,
growth is still very strong. Uh, and so that is something we want to avoid.
I see. So what you are saying here is like viral growth is driven by some other reason other than this collaboration.
Oh, yes, yes. The viral growth is something, that's what we meant.
Okay,
That happened before the collaborations.
I see.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah. So maybe I should be clearer here. Yes.
Thanks.
Now, just to give you some ideas about what the data looks like, if you look at the set of creators that we have that are in our data set, you look at their number of followers, as you can see, of course, the highest is 200,000, but it has a very nice variations. A lot of them actually concentrated around 50,000 or less. But we have a nice variations in number of followers. And look at the brands that collaborated with this set of people. They also have, you vary from some very big like Nike to smaller brands as well. Right. So these are actually good variations in the data because with this, when we play around with heterogeneous treatment effect, we will be able to look at, what is the effect of the size of the brand, or what is the effect on the followers, to create its own size. This is something that we can measure, and we have the data variations to identify it. Now about the post data, we collect complete posting history for, as I said, for 648 treated creators. To be precise, complete in the sense from January 2021 to August 2024, right? What we are collecting is number of likes, comments, number of video views. And the post content is a complete set of media content, including captions, images, and videos. Now, these pictures, it's very nice pictures that Dan created, really give you the step-by-step process how we handle these post data, this content data. So this is one example of a picture, and someone took a pictures selfie in a bathroom, right? And we just asked ChatGPT, hey, describe this picture for us. And it says the image shows a person taking a mirror selfie, da da da, and they're wearing a sleeveless light blue dress with floral patterns. So something very detailed. Someone holding a phone with a pattern case. Well, even with a case, is able to describe it. And with this, with the words, right? Now we can use some standard method of machine learning to vectorize it, basically. So we have these, we apply Subrat embeddings to basically convert these any text descriptions to a 768 dimensional vectors. Now, this is very big, high dimensional vectors, and we have a lot of posts. Some of them are videos, and for videos, we have to take snapshot of the video and interpret a series of pictures. So we have to do some dimensional reductions in order to get it down to something that we can handle using our computers. So we go through this PCA UMAP process to reduce it to 5-dimensional vectors, and then we do k-means clustering to basically figuring out, which topic the content has talked about. And so these 50 variables are going to be the variables that we end up using in our empirical analysis. Any questions?
So it
Okay,
seems
so
like
one thing, yes, so Sue, go ahead.
I just see there is a question in the chat.
Oh, okay. I'm not able to see. I don't know how I can see the chat.
The question asks, one influencer can work with multiple brands, which can be confusing if a follower likes one brand but hate the other. What is the implication on this work, I guess?
I'm not sure if I totally understand the question. So remember, we're only looking in our data. The Twitter creators that we have only work with one brand in the collaborations. So I'm not sure if the question is about maybe this creator got approached by multiple brands and they decided to just work with one brand. And that could be possible. And what happens then could be that unless there's something special about that particular brand, right? Now it could be that the creator is considering whether her own style, whether it actually match with that brand style or not, right? And if a brand that is very different, and they collaborate with them, they may feel like it doesn't work very well. And so there could be that kind of dimensions that lead to the decisions about whether the creator decided to collaborate with a brand or not. But I think what we see in the data, however, and I will show you more in the empirical analysis, is that we can also look at, in general, the content of the creators in her own creator account, right? To what degree it is similar to the brand's content, okay? That is outside this collaborator post. Okay, so that will be something we can measure, how similar they are. And we are actually also control for that as well. Okay, so to some degree, I hope that might address that question. Okay. So one interesting thing maybe here I would point out is that ChatGPT is actually very careful about not biased towards any kind of gender. So if we pay attention to the text, you will see that it refuse to say whether this person is a female or male, or it would just say a person, right? So I thought I'd just point it out because it's something I actually didn't notice until someone, when I presented this paper, someone pointed out.
So I have a question related to that.
Yeah.
I like the way that you process the image and text information, but then
Mhm.
given that, well, ChatGPT has some limitation, for example, it doesn't review the gender information. At the
Yeah.
same time, there is some information that's captured in the image that cannot be really captured in the text.
Yeah.
So image actually contains very rich information, but at the
Mhm.
end, I think what you're trying to do here is either to match on the topic or match on that 5-dimensional vector that's
Yeah.
extracted from. Um, so that meaning like a lot of information is lost during this process.
It still is. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And So, but that's something, at this point, that's as much as we can push. And yeah.
Yeah,
So
I know.
anyway, so that's, I'm happy, well, definitely happy to hear if any of you have ideas, if sure, ideas how to push this frontier, this boundary. Happy to chat more. But this is you're certainly right. That of course all these dimensionality reductions, we're gonna be losing information, right? But I think relative to what the previous work has done, I think we're still advancing the literature. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so what do we have? We also need to talk about the control post, right? And so how do we get the control post? And I'm going to be maybe speaking up a little bit. That would be the post by the two sources. One is the sources from the treated creators, but before they receive treatment, okay? So we'll look at the 90 days prior to that treatment post. Another one is people never got treated, okay? The first source gives us about 210,000 control posts. The second source gives us about potentially 220 posts. And by 625 never treated creators. And to address the selection problems, then we basically look at the control creator post, right? This from this pool, and we match it with the treated creator post. So we try to find a post. Ideally, we want to find a post by the control creators that look identical to the post or to that particular collaborator post. Okay. Now, of course, that post may not happen at the same time, right? So we're gonna have to realign the data, and in our empirical analysis, we're gonna have all these time dummy, dating dummies, all these kind of things to help us control for the heterogeneity. And when we do the matching, we're going to use propensity score matching. Okay. Now, and by the way, the second, I'm going to actually skip. Let me see, just very quickly. When we look at the creator post, right? For the controlled creators, we also require them to match in terms of the categories and the number of followers. Okay. And the data of number of followers are obtained from this source called Social Blade. So you can pay Social Blade to help you collect the data on that. So this is just a picture, and I know it's very, very kind of hard to read. But basically this is just showing you, after the matching, then the data sort of the controlled group and the matched and the treated groups are kind of narrowly fall within this band. Okay, and before you match, you get some of the data that are really far away. If you just use the raw control group data, the values of those variables can be very different for some of the topics. Now, let's get to the empirical analysis. This is just summary stat about the average growth rate of our treated creators. On average, the growth rate is about 0.08%. Okay, so even without any treatment, people are growing, in general, in terms of the number of followers. And here is just a visual pictures to show you some kind of smoking gun evidence that when someone collaborated with a brand, it appears that they have a bump in terms of their number of followers. Okay, so this is timing 0 is the timing when the collaborator post is made available, and you see that sort of a sudden increase. It's the day after the post is released, and you see the biggest bang for the bucks, and then it die out, right? So after a few days, actually that effect sort of disappear, and the trend falling back to kind of very, much the same line, in line with the control group. And then we also try to check whether there's any evidence on endogenous timing. And by doing, to achieve this, we basically look at Google Trends. So we want to see around the time when the collaborator post is posted, whether that particular creators have experienced some sort of abnormal Google Trends. And so we have ruled this out. We don't see that, at least for the set of people we have included in our sample. But this is more formal way. This just, without control, this is plotted. And this is actually the estimated treatment effect per period. We see something very similar to the first pictures that I showed you. Now, exactly how do we run the DID? We also do something a little bit non-standard. And because of the treatment effect, you see that visually it sort of go up, but then it die down very quickly. Right? So in order to capture that, we actually introduce a Poisson distributions in the treatment effect. And so what you will see is that we interact with the treatment dummies with these Poisson distributions. And then there's a sort of standard treatment effect variables beta that we try to estimate. The Poisson distributions parameters theta is also something we're gonna measure as well. We can estimate as well. And so Poisson distribution can capture something very, very flexible. It can capture something like this, right, with the right theta. And so we're hoping that will give us that flexibility to measure the treatment effect. So here are the results. And the dependent variable is follower growth rate, or just a plain follower growth. Okay. And what we'll see is that the treatment effect beta is statistically significant. And the theta basically is also significant. And when you plug in this value, it's essentially capturing this kind of the shape that we see in the pictures. In the first picture that I showed you, it goes up and then quickly come back down. So what we see is that the average treatment effect is about 0.47% bump in the cumulative follower growth rate. Okay. Now, just to give you some ideas, this might, how do you make out of it? It's a very small, well, but relative to the average daily growth rate, which is only 0.08%, this is a big bump. And break it down, right? What you will see is that 26% of that bump happens in day 0, right? And then 62% happened up to day 1, 85% up to day 2, and then after day 5, that treatment effect is pretty much gone. So all the treatment effect is basically all lumped together in the first 5 days. The average number of followers is 59,000 for the creators and 7.6 million for the brands. And so what this translates to is that on average, one exposure, right? On average, I mean, averaging across all these creator size and also the brand size, that will lead to additional 277 new followers on average. Now that's the...
Sorry, Professor Ching, can I quickly ask a question regarding the result? Yes, here. So if you look at the breakdown of the cumulative growth rate over time, you see that, in day 1, so day 0, it's only 26%. Day 1, 62 is increasing in the first 3 days, right? So I'm curious, how can you know that once the post is already there, it may also be the case that someone else is also reposting from the account or from the person itself, and that may bring this extra growth that's not from the,
So let me clarify. This is not the way that, this should not be the way that how you interpret these numbers. What it's actually saying is that, look at these pictures here, right? So the first 26% is kind of like this point here. Okay. And then the cumulative effect is what? 62%. 62% is basically referring to this point plus this point. Okay, so these 2 points add together give you 62% bump, right? Now, and then day 3, the cumulative effects come down to, well, actually, it increases still because it's cumulative effect. It can only increases.
Right.
But
So
the third day, the increase becomes smaller. So it becomes only down to here.
Right.
That's because it's coming down.
Right.
And so, so you're right. I think, in the sense that this is it just that the effect that we're measuring is triggered by the collaborator post, the posting timing of the collaborator post, right? Now, but what happened afterwards, maybe some people reposted, people, commented or sent it to friends and something like that. These are all possible actions that lead to the second day bump to be higher than the first day, right?
Yes.
And then, but then, what happens? You see this dying down quickly, and that's not surprising because new posts coming out so frequently. So any post can get people attention. It's only a very small windows has the effect. Does it make sense, Wei?
It does. So basically, the biggest bounce seems to be in day 1. So the first day was 26%. The second
Yeah.
day is the 62% minus the 26%.
Yes,
Right.
that's right. Yeah, the second day is actually the biggest. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is also makes sense, because like you said, people start reposting or retweeting or something like that. Now, and then with the remaining time, I can quickly talk about the heterogeneous treatment effect. So we, as I said, we actually have brand size, we have, engagement, we have, other things like post frequencies, and also how different the collaborative post is relative to brand post, regular post, and also how different this post create the differences, measuring how different the collaborative post is relative to the regular content of the creator post. And we're also able to measure creator size and creator engagement rate in general, right? And so these are the things that we can measure. And we're going to try to throw it in and see if we can learn more insight from it. And so if you look at the result, you will see, hey, it looks like if the brand is bigger, that is, they have more followers, the treatment effect, the interaction term says the treatment effect is going to be bigger. Okay, that's reassuring, and that's consistent with our intuitions. And if the brand is more engaging, the people are more engaging in general, they post more, the regular use, the followers are more active. Then also we see the treatment effect also seems to be also stronger, right? And now, interestingly, when you look at the creators' difference, this is measuring how different the collaborator post is relative to the creator's content. So the more different they are, we see there's a negative effect here. Okay, so there is some, problem that we talked about earlier, the reputation burning, that may be showing up in this interaction effect. So what happens could be that the readers, the followers notice that, oh, this is very different style. This is very different from what this creator has been doing in the past. This is not what I like, and they may just, even though this person may not receive any money to create that post, they may misinterpret that as this person may be selling themselves out or something like that. And so we also look at creator size. It turns out that it also have this kind of story there. The bigger the creators, then you have more of this negative effect happens, right? Because all the reputation burning effect come from your own followers. And so this is also kind of reassuring that we find something similar to sort of consistent with the existing literature. And so as the engagement as well. right? When it becomes, although this is kind of only marginally significant, okay? And so what do we make out of this result? For the remaining 5 minutes, I can summarize the result. One standard deviation increase in the log number of brand followers would add another 166 followers. Okay, that's the interaction effect. And one standard deviation increase in the brand engagement rate will also add about the same number of followers. Okay, so this is interesting, and it may suggest that, hey, you should work with a bigger brand. If anything, that may be one recommendations to the creators. But wait a minute, let's also be a bit more careful about these interpretations. So I'll not really talk about this. Let me see if anything interesting. Yeah, so this engagement and brand size, it turns out that when you look at the correlations, okay, the data tells us that the bigger the brand, usually you also see people are less engaged. So you see these negative correlations here. Right? The brand engagement and the brand size is negatively correlated. Okay, so this is very interesting because when you look at this effect, if you just try to follow the suggestions, kind of naive suggestions, hey, creators, you should work with a brand that are bigger, everything else the same, then you might also actually be working with a brand with a set of, followers who are less engaged. Right? And remember the effect here, when if you work with a brand that is everything else the same, has more followers, you may have a bigger benefit. But these effects suggest, or engagement effects suggest, if you work with a brand with followers who are less engaged, that means you will have, that treatment effect will be weaker. Right? And so if you just pick the brands with a more number of followers to work with, you're also picking a brand in general with less engaged audiences. And so what happened is, we try to just simulate the result. And what we find is that for a large range of brand size, the treatment effect actually is pretty much the same. They just cancel out. So even you work with a bigger brand, but then that alone gives you a bigger bang for the bucks. But you also actually encounter a set of followers who are less engaged. So actually that bring down the effect. And overall, it just cancels out. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have. Let me see if I have more things I want to say that I haven't said. Yeah, so the collaborator and differences, the collaborator post differences and the regular creators post differences is something I think is I have already mentioned it when we talk about the big table. And here I'm just going to reiterate a little bit more that sometimes if what you created is very different from in the collaborator post, is very different from your regular post, that can actually backfire. Right? It can lead to actually a negative effect. It can be so big, the interaction term, that lead to negative treatment effect. And so, but if you understand the repetition burning literature, that's actually not necessarily surprising, right? That resonates with the theory and the some of the empirical findings that sponsored posts can lead to drop in number of followers. And so I'm running in time, so I'm going to conclude now. What do we find? Well, on average, we found the exposure effect is positive and statistically significant. But the size of the effect, okay, may seem small. Okay, however, if you think about how short-lived a post is, I think when you think that way, I think that's not surprising. And if you measure against the average growth rate, that effect is actually not small. And smaller influences will benefit the most more in relative terms. Okay, and we also see larger brands may appear to need to give a bigger lift, but one has to be very careful because how engaged the audience are also matters. And if you ignore the engagement, how engaged the audience are for the brands, you could just end up, doesn't matter, which brand you work with on average. So another lesson is that when we create a collaborative post, you may also want to just push back. Even the brands say they want to change the style, you don't want to deviate too much because the more you deviate it, the more it might hurt you. It may not be worth it, whatever the exposure benefit is. So I'm going to end it here. Hopefully, I'm looking at my watch. It's 1 minute over. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for sharing such interesting work with us. I mean, this research about exposure bugs in influencer marketing clearly give us a lot to think about. I'm pretty sure everyone here in the audience have learned a great deal from your research. So really appreciate your time spending with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for hosting my seminar today. I really appreciate it.
So Andrew, do you have a few minutes in case there are remaining questions from the audience? I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, happy to answer any questions. Yes.
Hi, Andrew.
Yes.
I want to ask, so the exposure bugs in your story can be reversed, can be the other way, right? So currently in your sample, it is like the fan base for the brands are much larger, like a few millions, while the fan size for the Instagram creators are much smaller. It could be the other way, right? So it could be like smaller brands, new brands try to get to Justin Bieber or Taylor Swift post, right? So in principle, you can also study that kind of collaboration and the effects on the smaller brands followers, right?
Theoretically, yes. I think that can be a follow-up study. You're right. We're only restricting ourselves to look at followers with less than 200,000 followers. And we can study the flip side. What if we study the people who are, bigger than that, or, even someone with millions of followers. And I suppose, we will have smaller sample size, but it is something that we are hoping to do after this paper too.
But Robin, if you think about it, I mean, it's all the previous influencer marketing effectiveness study that's studying that topic. It's like for the brands, they see the influencers and to see what is the increase for the brands. But I think Andrew, their take is something new that hasn't been really looked at.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Sue. That's very nicely put. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, kind of related to Robin's question, then so because Robin's question is kind of linking to then what is the benefit and what is the cost of brands using this strategy. So clearly this work demonstrates the benefits for the influencers, but then I guess his question is asking about what is the benefits for the brands.
Yes.
Not just free, right? Because they like brand safety concern, there is potential risk of any kind of they collaborate with anyone.
Yeah. Well, I think we thought about that too. The thing is, the brand is posting a lot of things, and now with the high frequency data, we may still be able to detect something. But we feel like, to be able to measure the effect precisely, that can be quite difficult. If we just, let's see, I think for the brands, the benefit may not be so, it may not be about the number of followers increases, right? Because they already have millions of followers, some of them. And having this collaborative post is probably not going to change the number of followers, but it may change the sales. Certain products that they each have these collaborators, these collaborative posts to promote. And so then we need to get data for the sales of that particular product. And that becomes, may not be that easy to collect.
So one thing I think is going to affect is sales. The other is the brand perception. because
Yes.
for some of them, like they can use those kind of collaboration to kind of divert consumers' perception towards the brand, like from one way to the other, becoming more down to earth or becoming more premium. I
Yeah,
think that can be very useful.
that can be too. Yeah. So yeah, so that of course requires collecting more data, right? And it might even be possible to look at the post, the followers, whatever the comments, there, maybe we can learn something about to what degree people perception about a brand might have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's
that may be interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So let me write it down actually. Yeah.
Andrew, and also another maybe more conceptual question, because it's an empirical paper, right? So getting the definition right and getting the data right is quite important.
Yes.
So the exposure here, I mean, so the measure is on the number of followers, the growth of number of followers, right? I'm
Yeah.
thinking just conceptually, um, if it's feasible, if you have data on the number of clicks, I guess that's a more accurate measure of exposure, because it may well be the case that, once it's being exposed and the other people have seen the post, they may click on the content creator's account, but after browsing through the account, they may not like it or follow it. But the value of the exposure has already been generated through this click.
Yeah. So I don't think, those click-through rates are readily collectible. And but if I'm wrong, please tell me, anyone here. Yeah, but for the data that we are able to get from the public
Right.
domain, I don't think we can get the click-through rate. I don't think we can actually see, oh, did someone click it, that person did visit Ralph's account, but then didn't end up following that account. That was not, I think that would be a great data set to have. I think this is wonderful to have, but at least we are not able to collect that.
Right. Right. So yeah, it's more like a data limitation, but I think that
Yeah.
way would be a
But
more
I think you're right.
accurate
Yeah.
measure of
Yeah.
exposure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ideally, I think you're right to think about, okay, what would be the ideal data that we can get.
Yeah.
And that's sure, if we can get that,
Right.
we can
Right.
even learn more. Yeah.
And also, I want to also stretch a bit further about the paper and ask about its generalizability across different platforms. So if I think about, say, Red Notes, Xiaohongshu in Chinese, for example, is one of the most popular UGC platforms in China, right?
Yeah.
So this platform is, it seems like it's not just a channel of exposure, it's also really like a space now for co-creation, for brand building. So I'm curious that for such environments where users engage more, and also build community identities together, so rather than pure exposure. So would you
Mm.
think that the value exposure would look different across this ecosystem or platforms?
Um, I don't know, I have to admit, I don't know enough about Xiaohongshu, how different they it could be, and so, whatever I say, may not make sense at this point. But I'm thinking, just in general, however, different platforms, of course, have a slightly different structure, right?
Yeah.
And but I think, the setting that we kind of shed light on, at the beginning, we use Super Bowl. That's an extreme, because Super Bowl, you have superstars, to be on those halftime shows. But just imagine someone who want to write novels, and or some photographers, they like to take pictures and they want to show their pictures to people. And for them, they try to get newspapers, some online big platforms to feature their work. I think to some degree, these sort of that lesson that we learned here resonate very well with that kind of settings. Someone who doesn't know, who nobody knows, and try to, just post their, have newspapers that accept the stories, and post it. And they're hoping, that would lead to something in the future that would help them build the names in the future. I think that's, my sense is, whatever the platforms we're talking about, there's going to be some of these kind of stories there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the other way to think about this is like, it's influencer marketing is kind of like endorsement. Oftentimes, when we think about it's influencers endorsing the brand, but in this case, it's actually branding. Brands endorse those influencers, and as a result, like there is a payment, whether in terms of follower or other things. That's coming as
Good
a
point. Yes, that's right. So it is both ways, right? And of course, to some degree, sponsor posts, also influencers being selected by a brand. But I think for some reasons, most of the followers of the influencers do not see it that way. They have used to receiving advices from their influencers. They trusted the influencers, right? And suddenly, if that influencer say, have a post that say, "Hey, this is advertised or sponsored," that will destroy that or counter that perception. But I think collaborative posts, in some sense, if we it may even be better if we just make it clear this is not received payment or something like that. That might help removing that part of concerns. But I think you're right. There are two things there, right? One is that people who don't know about this person at all, right? And so they cannot have any downside because they're not following this person anyway, right? So it can only have positive effects for the people who don't know these influencers. It's only for the people who know this influencer or already following them, how the negative effect come from them potentially, right? And for them, at least for what we measure, they're already following this person. You cannot following this person even more. Maybe we can measure the engagement rate. Maybe that's something we can look at. Actually, that's something we can look at, how the engagement rate changes.
And also, if I may, just one small last question. So just going beyond this particular study, how do you think about AI is going to change marketing and brand building in general? Because I think, the brand may choose to work with certain influencer because of certain style. Given AI's capability now of replicating, not say perfectly, but near perfectly of any style, what might be the implication for, in general, just going beyond the study?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And it's a complicated question to answer, because it highly depends on how good AI fine-tune itself in the future, right? And but we're already seeing, like what the ChatGPT rolled out, and I'm sure and in some of the platforms that Alibaba and DeepSeek might have are also able to create images, post, pictures and things like that, just by pumping the AI and they create it for you. And so I think, it makes the creations easier. And so there may be a lot more content being created. And so that's one effect. But then when there are more contents being created, then, I think I'm just saying out loud, I don't really know the answers, but just thinking about the logic, right? We just see, even based on our current data set, we see any post, the effect is short-lived, right? Even the one collaborative post appears to be pretty strong effect, only lasts for 5 days. And if you get a lot more content being posted, the effect of any post may also become smaller. And because people's attention just diverted to any new content. And so I think at the end, how people use AI to generate content, it could be that the content becomes better and better, right? But it could also be that people just quickly roll out more things. And if there are a lot of content that are just being rolled out very quickly, and they're more or less the same stuffs, I think for consumers, there's also a question about, we use human eyes to read it, to watch it, right? Is it possible that we also see, okay, this is more or less the same things over and over again, we kind of lose interest. Yeah, so that this potential theoretical effect, I don't know how it's going to play out. Yeah. Yeah, I think also depends on how disciplined people are, if AI can help you to produce something better, also produce something faster. Okay, how do you make the trade-off?
Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Are there any more questions? Wonderful. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much for everyone who come to the seminar. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Wen, for organizing the webinar series.
Thank you for moderating this, and also thank everyone for joining us today.
Everyone, have a good evening or afternoon or morning.
Thank you. Yes. For sure. What time is you? What time is it?
In the afternoon, 2 p.m.
Okay. All right. So you still have half a day.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to send you a few kind of comments on the paper, and yeah, I
Sure.
really like it. I think
Thank you.
I mean, even though maybe there are some technical things that can be, but then when you show the model-free evidence, it's just so clear. Like clearly there is a positive, very strong, significant impact in the first 1 day or 2 days or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it matter like what kind of matching approach that you're using, the effect is going to be there.
Hopefully.
But
Thank you.
I think like if you just position this paper, like you're taking the perspective of the influencer. What
Yeah.
is the benefit of influencer? Like we're here now looking at all those previous studies, like the brand effectiveness. In that
Yep.
sense, it's very nicely. Like this is empty space.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see whether the reviewers like it. Yeah.
Okay, good
Yeah.
luck.
Thank you. Thank you. So I look forward to receiving your feedback.